got out SOR out of the jail, which is supervised release. He didn't last a month until he violated, and he got picked up. So he's going to have to, you know, live at the foot of the cross for 10 years. And if he violates it, he's looking at the 15.
Well, that's right. And that's a point that the judge went to great pains to point out as Adam Gillard took his plea and the judge was imposing sentence. Let's go inside the courtroom and listen.
Now, just so you're clear, if you want to be successful in terms of the probationary term that's subsequent and consecutive to the 5 years in prison, you have to follow not only those things you promised to do per your plea agreement, but you have to abide by all the rules and regulations of probation, which I've earlier identified as standard or general conditions. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
In the event you fail to comply with the requirements of your probation, then you are faced with the prospect of a violation of probation, in which instance you will come back before the court. There will be no jury trial. It will be a hearing that requires proof by the greater weight of the evidence, or as sometimes it's referred to, sufficient evidence to satisfy the conscience of the court. It is not a jury trial that requires proof beyond all reasonable doubt. And if, as a product of such a hearing, I determine that you in fact willfully violated your probation in any material respect, I can sentence you up to the maximum for this crime, subject to any credit for time served. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any questions whatsoever about any terms of this plea agreement or anything I have discussed with you?
No, Your Honor.
One last question. It's required under the rules of criminal procedure now. The Florida Supreme Court has directed all of us to ask the following question, and that is, you have become intimately familiar with all the evidence in this case, including the physical evidence. Is that correct, Mr. Gillard?
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you aware of any physical evidence for which DNA testing, if done, would tend to exonerate you in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Is the defense aware of any such evidence?
None, Your Honor.
State.
None.
Mr. Gillard, do you believe you understand everything?
Yes, Your Honor.
If it is your intention to go forward with this agreement, please identify that decision with your lawyer, who in turn will enter a formal change of plea, who will not and cannot do it until you specifically authorize it.
Your Honor, at this time, the defendant, Adam Norman Gallard, will withdraw his previously entered plea of not guilty and will enter a plea of guilty as charged to the amended information.
All right, and before I go ahead and accept the plea, it's been previously represented, Ms. Roberts, that you've had communication with the representatives of the families of the two victims in this case. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
And as a product of your conversations, I have been advised that these folks do agree with this disposition given what the circumstances are as of now.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. With that acknowledgement, then I will accept your plea of guilty, Mr. Gillard. I find it to be freely and voluntarily given. You appear to me to clearly understand the nature and consequences of your plea, and there is, without question, an adequate factual basis to support this plea. In accordance with the agreement, in the aforementioned case, I hereby adjudicate you guilty as charged, count 1 of the amended information, that being leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death, and sentence you to 5 years in the Department of Corrections with credit for 498 days, followed by a consecutive term of 10 years probation with the special conditions identified by the terms of the plea agreement. And the court specifically reserves jurisdiction for a period of 60 days to consider the matter of restitution, which I believe the lawyers will submit by way of agreed final civil money judgment. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right.
Yes, Judge, when you're finished, Mr. Roberts and I would like to address you on the record in open court.
All right. And Mr. Roth, would you please advise your client of his appellate rights under Florida Rules of Criminal Procedure?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Yes, sir.
Judge, with the state's concurrence, Adam would like to address the family of Ms. Taylor and Ms. Andrews. There's been a very difficult case for everyone. Hopefully the healing process can begin. This case was tried. Adam had no alternative. The plea offer in the case was 15 years in prison, which we certainly understand and are not being critical at all of the state. Adam would like to address the court and the family with the state's consent, and we would respectfully ask if he could sit in the witness stand so that he may face the family and the court and the prosecutor and have his say.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
All right, you may do.
And indeed, Adam Gillard went on to apologize to the family members of the victims. Clearly heartfelt, but it leaves me with this question. Had Adam Gillard been, say, a mafia hitman and had committed murder for hire, he'd probably be facing the death penalty in the great state of Florida. Instead, he negligently kills 2 people. He gets 5 years. Why does it matter what's going on inside of his head? Criminal defense colleague Greg Heisler, why? Why?
Well, because the deterrent effect of a sentence is there. It's supposed to control conduct in the future. In the case of a hitman, he's affirmatively waking up that morning and saying, you know, I'm going to go kill this guy and get $5,000 and run away. In this instance, we have an accident where a guy's driving. He didn't mean to kill the people.
Okay,
and it happened.
No, fine, it happened, but if you want to deter bad conduct, that is, if you want to force people to be more careful, putting this guy in prison for life or giving him the death penalty would send the same deterrent message that is always sent when you put somebody in prison for life or give them the death penalty, like, whoa, this is really bad. So I don't understand your explanation. Try again.
Well, my explanation is simple. People are faulty. We're imperfect as human beings. We make mistakes. When you wake up in the morning with the decision to go out and kill somebody, you are purposefully going out to do that, and that's forbidden. But we're imperfect, and so we're going to have oopsies. Everybody in this country, in this world, has a spaz factor where they're going to make mistakes.
Okay, but I guess here's my problem with that. When this idea was prevalent in, say, 1700, it certainly is true that somebody who intended to do harm was more dangerous to society than somebody who was doing harm carelessly or negligently. Look, if you're driving the buggy cart while drunk, chances are you're going to hurt yourself and the horse, and maybe somebody riding the buggy, but probably not really bad. And so it made sense then to punish negligent conduct less seriously than intentional conduct. But in an era of technological interdependence, when people are driving 2,000-pound machines of glass and steel at 100 miles an hour and airplanes and have access to nuclear weapons and nuclear power plants, where negligence, recklessness can cause far more harm than somebody who picks his victims one by one, should we rethink this?
No, because if you look at the base element, there's a duty and a breach of duty. You know you're supposed to do something, but you make an error, a mistake, not consciously, but subconsciously because we're imperfect as humans, versus going out and firing a gun at somebody where you know the outcome is going to happen.
Buzz, as a shrink, help me out here. I mean, what does this matter in terms of protecting society?
What we're looking at is we're looking at people's perception of people who have a problematic life. This gentleman clearly has a history. The jury didn't know that, but this individual does have a history of what appears to be drug abuse and also reckless behavior behind the wheel. So in that situation, our perception is, well, you know, why was he driving? And he seemed to have this behavior. It seemed to be pervasive. That's where I think you're coming, is here was a guy who seems like he was a threat to society.
Let me tell you where I'm coming from, because I hate to be thought of as subtle.
Okay.
Where I'm coming from is that I think people who are on the roads driving recklessly and negligently, not paying attention to what they're doing, are far more of a danger to me, my family, you, and your family than people who do bad things intentionally. Because chances are the mob hitman is going to hit some mob guy or gal. But the drunk driver or the negligent driver is much more likely to hurt your family or my family, and that's where I'm coming from. We're going to take a break.
I'm there.
Coming up next, we're going to go live to West Palm Beach for the very latest reaction to Adam Gillard's guilty plea. Stay with us.